Hey everyone, getting the Delorean ready this season, I noticed that something is getting progressively worse. Let's listen. I'll point out that the first time you hear this, I've already pre-warmed up the car to the first line on the temperature sender. So this is not a cold engine. We could hear that throttle response is absolutely terrible. Terrible bog on the return and black smoke showing a rich condition coming out the pipes. Not good. If I could get the engine hot enough for a fan cycle, it will improve further. Here's a closer shot with the black smoke coming out of the pipes. I'll slow it down here. Now you can see the black smoke. While the mixture probably needs a little work, the big problem here is the pin that this plate is pushing against. It is filled with tar and gum and resin, and it is getting stuck, and the response is really bad. Of course, I've checked all my vacuum lines, none of which are original, and there are no leaks, there's no damage. Also, this is happening in closed loop when the engine is stone cold. So we're going to have to get in here, not break the whole thing open, but remove it and clean that pin. I did come back later where the engine is cold, and I don't mean freezing cold, but it's been off for a couple of hours. And as I push down on this plate, we could see there's some gap right there, no resistance. So I'm going to go around front, I'm going to prime the fuel system a couple of times. Even give it a try. You shouldn't be able to see that plate move from starting RPM. Even after all that starting and priming, we could see there's still a little slop in the plate. That should be under full resistance at this point. Prime some more. Of course, I could bypass the RPM relay to get this up to full pressure, but I shouldn't have to. Now already we're seeing after several times, there was enough to push it all the way down. You shouldn't even see the plate move this time, and the engine should successfully start. Because of that, at least the mixture is close enough, it's able to start now. So we'll give it a listen. Almost to a stall. And then a recovery. This oscillation of almost stalling will continue to repeat in a cycle. Slowly improving as the engine comes to temperature. That's about enough of all this. We're going to shut the engine down, and we're going to let it cool overnight, and then we're going to get started. Placing a towel over the work area. The size will be 12 millimeter. We're just going to give a little turn to break the tension and unscrew manually, making sure that both washers, there's one on each side, are removed and they don't fall into the engine. Put the screws back on, and I'm going to repeat this 6 more times. I will, however, have to remove these two because they are blocking that one other hose. So I remove them, put them off to the side. Now I have access to this one. More dangerous when they're sideways. The risk of those copper washers falling in increases. But we got both of them this time. I place these two right back in so I can keep track of it. The third one left out to provide clearance for the screw later. But now I'm going to remove this one. Again, a sideways one. High risk of copper washers falling. Again, succeeded. Now put the towel under here for these. Unscrewed, removed, washers, back on. Wash, rinse, repeat. Another one in the back here. If you don't know where they go, be sure to mark them. Trying not to drop anything, and I do succeed. 18 mil for this one. Again, same procedure. And finally a 19 for the last one. I'm going to put two together because this is a stubby 19. Break the tension. And this is a double. So we got 3 washers on this one. High risk of washer falling. And no sooner do I say that, I lost one. I'll fish it out later with the scope, but for now we'll continue on. Removing this piece, putting the remaining washers back in this bolt, and screwing it back in. And that's it for the hoses. On to the next step. The chances of turning out the 3 flathead screws is about impossible, so I'm going to use an impact driver right here with a hammer to loosen them up. Very little clearance here to work, but I don't have to hit it that hard. I'm just trying to loosen it. It's not like it's rusted in, but it's better than stripping them out. And after a couple of wraps, we could see that I could take a fitted flathead with the proper bit and then give it a turn, and that one's loosened. So I'm going to repeat this process. Same thing for the other 2. Success on the second one. Finally, we move to the last screw. And that one loosens as well with no damage. Very good. At this point, I'll loosen all 3 of those screws. Remove them all and put them off to the side into a safe location. Carefully lifting up on the fuel metering unit, I stick my hand under because I don't want that pin to fall out, even though I believe it's stuck, which it is, but I hate for that thing to fall into the valley of death. This is really gummed up. We know it's not completely seized because the engine works, but I'm definitely not pulling this out with my fingers. Let's get it over to the bench. A quick look inside shows we got some gum on that bearing face right there, so we're going to clean up in here too later. Here's how the plate deflects the pin up and down. But for now, we're just going to place a towel over everything to protect it and get back over to the bench. At the bench, I'm going to start off first with lineman's pliers. I know it's not fully seized, and I think it moves a little. I'm going to try here with a more grippier teeth, but there's no way I'm pulling this out with these pliers. It's just not a thing. Yeah, it slipped. So I'm going to put just a little bit of carb cleaner, brake cleaner right here, just to loosen up the end. After sitting for a while, I'll be using vice grips because I know it'll hold on better, and it's turning and it pulls up, and we got it out without any damage. Like I said, it wasn't completely seized, it's just gummed up, and we could see a lot of that varnish on the end here. Inside the unit, I could already see varnish on the bottom, extensive amounts, and that's enough to really gum it up. Spraying the cleaner in, but making sure that it pours right down. I don't want this carb cleaner in the system. I just want to spray that immediate surface and let it drain. And now I'll be taking a paper towel and just taking a look. Yeah, lots of varnish and tar in here. Enough to slow down or impede that mating surface. So we're going to start cleaning this out. Right now I just really want to see what I'm up against before I get into the main cleaning. And I'm spraying this towel, which will expand in there and then spin it around. This technique I'm doing will allow the insides to soak in the carb cleaner without letting the carb cleaner get all the way up in the system. So a dry towel, and then I spray it to saturate that towel, and then everything could just soak there for a while without really just spraying it down into the middle. In the meantime, while it's soaking, I'm going to clean up the end of this pin, and it's taking a lot of effort to get that varnish off. It's not coming right off with the cleaner. And I imagine that varnish softens up with heat, which would explain why the engine starts to run a little better as it heats up. And this piece I'll hit again with the cleaner just to re-soak that rag and let it sit for a good long while. Eventually I wanted to change up towels, so I used that towel just to clean up the varnish off of this face right here. You can see the amount of work that goes into it to get that accumulated varnish off of the metal. It's really something. And then more subsequent sprays while the unit is pointed downward so nothing really gets up inside the fuel metering system. We'll check our progress with the pin, initially removed with vice grips. We could see very gently inserting it, and there's no resistance. Very nice fit, night and day difference. After the cleaning, I'm pouring gasoline into the unit, so if any carb cleaner got in to any degree, it's going to be diluted by this gas and just pour out where the bolts are. I do this a couple of times. It's just so the carb cleaner doesn't damage anything on the inside, nothing more. I've removed this bolt to allow the gas level to get a bit higher to come out some of the other bolts, just to make sure gasoline is circulated through appropriately. And then I place it back in. Place the pin in once more after the rinse down. And it goes in just fine. Everything's perfect. No complaints. Night and day difference. I'm amazed the car worked before. And this is why you have to hold the pin during installation. Just leaning it on an angle, we can see the pin falls right out. So that's really what we're looking for. I will need a new O-ring for the reassembly. This one is seen better days. Also, I'm going to need all new copper crush washers as well. I want to quickly address the rust on the bottom of the metering unit. So I'm very simply going to take a Q-tip with a little bit of anti-seize and just paint a very light silhouette. As the cardboard in the Q-tip shapes itself, it'll be able to completely fill this in without getting too much on it. I just want to cover it a little to protect it. So I'm going to do all of them now in the same fashion. And once that's completed, I'm going to take the remainder of what's ever on the Q-tip and paint the bottom of it. Then wipe it off with a clean paper towel to just leave, again, a thin veneer on the metal. That's it. I'll address the area with the O-ring later. Some people may have noticed the original fuel lines. When I bought these from John Hervey in 2002, he didn't have the whole set yet, so I'm going to replace these. 1 week later, parts have arrived from Delorean Go. This includes the short frequency valve line, fuel return line, the other frequency valve line, the O-ring for the fuel metering unit, and finally a complete copper crush washer kit. If hose installation is of zero interest to you, you could skip to the timing mark provided. Back in the engine compartment, I'm going to remove this cover to provide just a little bit more clearance to work on the first hose that's going to be removed. Every bit helps, and this fitting is going to suck. Way down here in the ass end of the engine compartment, I'll secure the coupler with a 17, which also adds some clearance to work, and then with a 14, I'll grab the hose fitting. The movie doesn't fully illustrate the torment, as I've been soaking and working on this for quite a while before it broke here in the video. Now with little room, I'll have to continue turning it with the 14 while holding it with the 17 till it's loose enough that I could spin it off with my fingers. Now already it's loose enough that I could slowly spin it off. It could be argued that I could just take in the whole coupler and the hose at the same time. But here we are, this is the order I did it, and I really don't know the condition of the coupler given how hard it was to get the hose off. But the hose is out. And I can see that the fitting is different from the new hose, so I'm not going to be able to just screw the new one in. That's why they provided a replacement coupler, which means there's also more work to do way down there. This time I'll be using two 17s, but I can use the box end this time, which makes it arguably a bit easier. And while deflecting with the box end, I could just use my fingers and spin off that threaded connector on the back. But the fun isn't over yet, even with that connector off. Because now I have to separate that end connector from the compression fitting, that ring just behind it, and they've been pressed onto each other for about 50 years. So working it back and forth also spins the ring too. I need to support the ring while I work it back and forth to break that bond which has formed over so many years. All the while laying on my engine compartment in the hot sun trying to do this. In the moment I wasn't recording, the piece finally popped off and fell under the car. The old coupler has seen better days, but it's not terrible. It would have held. However, the new coupler has different threads. We can see this side does match up with the old. Having cleaned the surfaces, I'll spin the new coupler right on. My hose routing may change 20 times, but here I am installing that new fuel hose, aligning it up to the coupler so I can screw it in, give myself an idea where I'm at. And that's why I'm going to screw it down to remove the slack, finger tight only, but not tighten anything down. And here's how that new fitting looks. I then unscrewed the hose so I could get a box end right on this side to hold it steady while I tighten down the coupler, because the coupler is not going to need adjusting, so it might as well be tightened now. I don't have to work all the way back here anymore. I did the final tightening without the camera in my face. Then I screwed that fuel line back on. With that I moved to the frequency valve, where I immediately unplugged the electrical connection, putting it off to the side, as well as the removal of this old cable tie. Here's our new hose, supplied with a coupler. This fitting will be loosened with a 14 and 17 mil. I should be able to unscrew it with my fingers at this point. Now I can just pop that cable right off and remove it from the car. Here's a new coupler they provided. We'll install that right now. And again, using a 14 and 17, I'll snug it down. the hose connects to that fitting, I'll just hand tighten it because I have no idea what I'm doing with it yet. And I'll move right on to the next hose, scoring it with a razor to remove that outer protective hose, pulling it away to expose the fuel line beneath it. With a margin, I'll make a cut with the razor blade and remove the old hose. Then I'll score the old fuel line all the way to the end so that I can remove it from the bob fittings. I'll have to get that bob fitting section carefully too. Just about ready to come off now, and with a little bit of convincing, it popped right off. There is a protrusion at the end, as we see, so you have to be very careful when removing that hose you don't break this. Here's our replacement hose, as well as a bag of goodies. Immediately I'll press the provided rubber hose onto the bob fittings of the valve. They also provided 2 hose clamps. I'll slide both of them onto the hose at this time. Finally, I'll insert the new hose slightly just to hold everything in place. I'll tell you right now that this original routing for the new hose is wrong. We'll address it later. Because now it's time to remove this old O-ring on the bottom, hitting that exposed metal again with that really thin veneer of anti-seize. I covered the new O-ring in just a little bit of moly to hold it in place when I turn it upside down. This is now all ready for installation. Making our way back to the engine compartment now. I'll clean this face right here because this is a sealed area and can cause a vacuum leak if air could suck through it. Remembering to support the pin as I turn it over. I don't feel like having the pin fall out and getting stuck in the engine. I lay everything down right in place and it seats just fine. Now the 3 screws will be reintroduced. And I'll begin tightening down just to remove the slack only. At this point, I'll go through and make them just a little tighter to compress that O-ring, followed by a fitted screwdriver to complete the tightening process. The installation is now complete. I won't be doing any of the hoses on this side, focusing my attention only to the new hoses that are on this side. I'll exclude this fitting right here and this fitting right here since they were previously installed. We're going to only concentrate on the new ones. Each screw will be cleaned and then receive new copper crush washers from the kit. Comparing the sizes to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. The first one is secured, but I know it's wrong. This is not routed the same way as the old hose, but I didn't know it at the time. Only the slack is being pulled out at this time. We begin with the next hose that connects in conjunction with the return fuel line. The outer diameter is different on the copper crush washer, but no issue. The new one's probably the correct one anyway. I place the first one on through the fuel return, the next copper washer, and then my new hose, followed by one more copper washer. Finally, I'll just finger tight everything in. Then I'll draw out the slack, and this particular fitting will then be tightened down because I know it to be correct. Something's wrong with the other side though. It's way too short. We have to turn the entire sensor to fit it. And yeah, this just doesn't look right. So I reach out to Delorean Go while I worked on the other half, got this side done, and they got back to me immediately and showed me the routing for the new hose, which goes just like this. It's entirely different, but we can see everything straight now. We have nice slack, nothing's too tight. Measuring the other hose, no more strange angle. Just need to remove a small length of that rubber hose and everything should fit perfectly. With a little work, I get it fully seated and tighten down the hose clamps on both sides. This portion of the project is looking good now. All I need to do is plug that connector in the valve. I do it a couple of times just to clean the wipers, and we're good. So I'll install the rest of the connections on this side now, tightening all the fittings that I left loose for adjustment, and then checking over every fitting to make sure they're tight. With a shorting wire in the RPM relay socket, I'll let the system pressurize for a few seconds. Now we hear everything pressurize. Removing the towel, I could feel that there is no slack. This plate is solid. I go around everywhere, obviously except for the output, and check for leaks. All of my fittings. I want to get my hands under there and actually feel, make sure everything is dry. Yeah, this is all looking good. I don't see any leaks anywhere on the inputs or around here. The new fuel hose swap out is a success. But we're not out of the woods yet, because the pressure exerted on this plate is now entirely different, which means my CO mixture is entirely different, and nothing's going to work. That means we're going to need to pull the injectors to calibrate this thing back to 0. And because it's a DeLorean, we're going to find all sorts of surprises as we dig deeper. But that concludes part 1. I hope you found this video enjoyable, entertaining, and informative. Do me a favor, hit that like button down below. Helps me out a lot when you do. And hit that subscribe button to be informed of more videos like this when they come out. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Would you like to reply?